The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Deanna Jordan. A very good morning to you. First, the lead stories. The 2022 national budget will include measures to reduce the cost of living, and personal income tax will be reduced. David Granger and Joseph Harmon have stepped down from a partnership for national unity. In regional news, Hong Kong authorities have busted a shipment of meat with cocaine from Suriname. And for the international news, we'll bring to you the latest bulletin from the BBC World Service. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in a moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now the news in detail. The leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Aubrey Norton, on Tuesday, was elected chairman of the Umbrella, a partnership for national unity, after Mr. David Granger stepped down. APNU General Secretary Joseph Harmon also stepped down as General Secretary of that loosely knit coalition of the PNCR, the major party, and several small and little-known parties. In a statement, APNU says that the two informed the first APNU Executive Council meeting for this year of their decision to demit office. Sources, however, said that Mr. Granger will remain the representative of the list of candidates for APNU plus AFC, and so far, Mr. Harmon remains Guyana's opposition leader. It is left to be seen whether Mr. Harmon, not being a PNCR executive member or General Secretary of APNU, will resign from the post of opposition leader. The Executive Council requested that Mr. Harmon continue as General Secretary for 7 days to facilitate the smooth transition to a new General Secretary. However, Mr. Granger demitted office with immediate effect, paving the way for the election of a new chair. President Irfan Ali says that the 2022 national budget includes money to cushion the impact of rising cost of living, but indicates that it will not be unconditional cash grants. He was addressing the nation last night ahead of the presentation of the budget at 2 p.m. today. The president stopped short of saying that the money would not be distributed across Guyana as yet another unconditional cash grant, but this time around would be based on assessments.
I've asked the Minister of Finance to set aside a sizable allocation to address issues of cost of living. And this sizable allocation will be used through consultation with communities across the country to identify specific ways and initiatives in which we can deploy this budgeted allocation to ease the burden on the population.
President Ali also hints that personal income tax will be reduced.
I've also advised the Minister of Finance to look at the personal income tax of taxpayers and to make necessary adjustment in keeping with the budgetary framework and the affordability of the country at this moment.
President Irfan Ali. Shadow Natural Resources Minister David Patterson and Public Works Minister Juan Edgell are at odds over whether Guyana really needs so much electricity that will be generated by the natural gas power plant. Mr. Patterson says that a study conducted by the Inter-American Development Bank in 2016 and updated in 2019 says Guyana's energy demand will be 330 megawatts by 2035. He says the government has projected power demand for the Demerara-Berbice interconnected system will be 415 megawatts or an additional 290 megawatts in the next 3 years. Kicking off debate on a motion on the proposed $1.5 billion gas-to-shore facility at Wales, West Bank Demerara, Mr. Patterson said that the government has not provided any evidence showing that Guyana can consume all of that electricity.
However, sir, they have failed to inform the country which industries will be requiring this power. In other words, they are committing the people of Guyana to building a power plant, committing more than $1.5 billion, but they have no end users. As a country, we will be paying for electricity which we cannot currently utilize, since this supply is nearly 3 times the current demand.
But Public Works Minister Edgell says that housing areas and economic activities, which will be opened up across Guyana, will consume the electricity.
What we would have done, Mr. Speaker, the gas-to-shore project is just one item in a menu of measures for the transformation of Guyana, but it is a very important item because the main cry of the people of Guyana to see Guyana transform and develop, and the hindrance to that over the years has been the cost of electricity.
Public Works Minister Juan Edgell. The United States has been telling the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Prison Service that they may not be able to receive American assistance if they violate human rights. The U.S. Embassy says that the Department of State's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor trained members of the police force and the prison service. According to the embassy, the training focused on the Department of State's Liais law, which prohibits state assistance to foreign security forces if there is credible information that a security force unit has committed a gross violation of human rights. These include extrajudicial killings, torture, forced disappearance, or rape under the color of law. The U.S. mission here says that the training reviewed definitions of grave violation of human rights, the consequences of committing them, and the pathways to remediating units whose members have committed these actions so they may once again receive assistance. Through the United States Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, CBSI, the U.S. Embassy has facilitated the training of 889 police officers in various law enforcement areas. These include major case management, forensic video analysis, narcotics investigations, and intelligence gathering. The embassy says the U.S. is poised to facilitate more than a dozen training opportunities in 2022. This most recent training, the American Embassy says, is an example of the U.S. government's commitment to working with Guyanese security forces in promoting respect and protection of human rights in policing. The Health Ministry says that 10 more persons died from COVID-19 over the past 5 days. Most of them were over 60 years. The vaccination status of 4 of them was not known. 3 of them were not vaccinated, 2 were fully vaccinated, and 1 was partially vaccinated. The Health Ministry says that of the 163 hospitalized persons, 20 are in the intensive care unit. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony stresses the need for persons to be fully vaccinated, including the booster, so that they can defend themselves against the Omicron variant.
This can all be prevented if people come out and get their vaccinations, first, second, or booster shots. And against Omicron, it's better for you to get all three. The first one, the second one, and then get the booster, because without which you're not going to be protected. So I really want to urge people to do that. As you would see in the last couple of days, we would have seen an increase in hospitalization. It's going up gradually. But apart from the hospitalization, we are seeing that people are ending up with a severe form of COVID, and some of them have died from COVID.
Those ordered to isolate themselves at home now total 12,682. Guyana now has legislation governing organ transplants. Already, hospitals have been transplanting kidneys, heart, and cornea. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says that with the passage of the organ transplant bill last night, Guyana now follows Trinidad and Tobago in becoming the second CARICOM state to have such a law. He says it is important that Guyana have such a law.
It is important because since 2008, we've started to do kidney transplants. And then in 2014, we started doing corneal transplants. So this bill paves the way now to do it in a very structured way, using all the international best practices. And the hope is that once we have structured it this way, that instead of just doing corneal and kidney transplants, that we'll also be able to do other types of transplants.
Under the law, persons must give permission for their organs to be transplanted. In the case of a dead person, the next of kin will have to give permission. And over now to regional news. Hong Kong Customs have arrested 2 men after they confiscated $18 million worth of cocaine. Star News reports that the cargo of drugs was hidden in a container that arrived from Suriname. The shipping container, said to be carrying frozen meat, arrived at the Kwai Chung Customs House Cargo Examination Compound from South America on January 10th. Based on information received from a foreign law enforcement agency, customs officials examined the container and discovered 104 packs of suspected cocaine hidden in the container's refrigerated compartment. Each pack weighed 1.3 kilograms. A law enforcement source said that the 28-year-old would have helped with logistics of shipping the container to Hong Kong, while the 33-year-old would be the recipient. In Hong Kong, trafficking in a dangerous drug carries a life sentence and a 5 million Hong Kong dollars fine. In November, customs officials seized 147 million Hong Kong dollars worth of cocaine hidden in an electrical transformer arriving by plane from Guatemala, the largest seizure of the drug of Hong Kong at Hong Kong International Airport in 2 decades. And now in the Bahamas, the head of a fast-growing breakaway teachers union, Sandra Major, has welcomed the resumption of face-to-face learning. She says she and her members have no issues with the shift. She says the only remark was that they got information about schools being reopened late because people had it on Facebook before teachers or the administration. Ms. Major says the Minister of Education has since apologized and has taken responsibility for that. Ms. Major, a music teacher for 41 years, said the Bahamas Educators, Counselors and Allied Workers Union was registered in October 2020 and began its membership drive in April 2021. The union's executives are mostly based in Grand Bahama. And now for the international news, here's the latest bulletin coming from the BBC World Service.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. Tensions over Boris Johnson's future as Britain's Prime Minister are mounting ahead of the publication of an official report into allegations that he and his staff held parties in breach of his government's own coronavirus restrictions. Mr Johnson has already faced vociferous calls to resign, including some from within his own party, and the pressure is bound to amplify if the report finds him at fault. Our political correspondent is Rob Watson.
The Prime Minister is hoping that when the report comes out, even though there's a police investigation now underway, that he will be able to say to Conservative MPs, look, I know this has been horrible, but the country will move on. It will start to talk about other things eventually, and I'm the guy who won you an 80-seat majority. Don't forget it. He is absolutely determined to fight on. Whether he wins or not is another matter.
Thailand and Saudi Arabia have resumed diplomatic relations that were frozen for 3 decades following the theft of precious jewels from a Saudi prince. Jonathan Head reports from Bangkok.
Relations between the two countries were downgraded after a Thai cleaner working for a Saudi prince stole valuable jewels, including a rare 50-carat blue diamond, and sold them back in Thailand. The Thai police recovered some of the jewels and sent them back to Saudi Arabia, but most of these turned out to be fakes. Most of the jewels were never found. Both countries hope they can now profit from renewed cooperation in areas like tourism and petrochemicals, and from sending Thai nationals once again to work in Saudi Arabia.
Ukraine's foreign minister has played down concerns that a Russian invasion may be imminent, saying Moscow had not yet massed enough forces for a large-scale offensive. But Dmytro Kuleba said the risks were high, and he accused Russia of trying to sow panic in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned that Moscow will take appropriate measures if it does not get a constructive answer from the West on its security demands. Officials from Russia, Ukraine, Germany and France will meet in Paris, focusing on the continuing conflict in eastern Ukraine. Coronavirus protocols are being tested in disaster-hit Tonga after the arrival of an Australian warship with COVID-positive crew members on board. Here's Michael Bristow.
Aid is arriving in the Pacific island kingdom of Tonga after the earthquake and tsunami just over a week ago. But those delivering the relief could bring another problem, COVID. Tonga has been virtually free of the disease, but an Australian warship has arrived with more than 24 cases among its crew, all tested negative before departure. To stop COVID seeping ashore, the aid will be offloaded by the Australians, who'll then sail away. Their cargo, water, medicine and engineering equipment will be left on the dockside for 3 days before being handled by Tongans.
World News from the BBC. Thousands of people have held protests across Australia against the mistreatment of Indigenous communities as the country holds its annual national holiday marking the start of British colonisation. Australia Day is celebrated by many with parties and barbecues, but in Sydney, large crowds gathered to demonstrate against what they call Invasion Day. Campaigners argue the start of colonisation in January 1788 resulted in the marginalisation of Aboriginal people. New research in Britain suggests the majority of people who were recently infected with the Omicron variant are likely to have been reinfections. The team at London's Imperial College found that 2/3 of those who were infected said they tested positive previously. More than 100,000 volunteers took part in the REACT-1 study. Its director, Professor Paul Elliott, says cases have increased most steeply among children.
We saw an increase from December to January in all age groups. Actually, the largest increase was seen in the oldest people, something like nearly a 12-fold increase. But their rates are over 2%. So they're very, very high rates compared to what we've been seeing throughout the pandemic.
Lebanon has signed an agreement with Jordan to bring in electricity through Syria to help ease a crippling energy crisis. Currently, most areas of Lebanon only get 2 hours of power a day. The deal with Jordan should double that. The government is also negotiating to get supplies from Egypt. The power shortage is a result of Lebanon's disastrous economic crisis. Disney has defended its forthcoming live-action adaptation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs following criticism by the actor Peter Dinklage. The Game of Thrones star, who has a form of dwarfism, called it a backward story. Disney said it was consulting with members of the dwarfism community to avoid reinforcing stereotypes. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. The 2022 national budget will include measures to reduce the cost of living, and personal income tax will be reduced. David Granger and Joseph Harmon have stepped down from a Partnership for National Unity. And in regional news, Hong Kong authorities have busted a shipment of meat with cocaine from Suriname. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.